I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We have a great show for you tonight, including some surprising news about cannabis sales in Oregon, a discussion with the state's new urban forester, and the new Multnomah County Sheriff's plans to help make schools safer. But first, Oregon's new governor is issuing executive orders aimed directly at stubborn problems in our state. Will it make a difference? We'll lay out the details for you. It's our big story. On Monday, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek was sworn in, and yesterday she signed 3 executive orders aimed at housing and the homeless. It was her first full day in office, and it was pretty darn busy. We would have brought you the story yesterday, but as many of you know, the Golden Globes took over our time slot. So we are giving it our deep dive treatment tonight. And in a few minutes, Blair Best will join us with a reaction to these gubernatorial decrees. But first, let's hear from Governor Kotek on what each order is meant to do.
Executive Order 2304 establishes a statewide housing production goal of 36,000 housing units per year and creates the Housing Production Advisory Council to develop a comprehensive budget and policy recommendations to meet that goal. That goal represents an 80% increase over recent construction trends. Second executive order number 2302. Declares a state of emergency due to homelessness in regions of the state that have experienced an increase in unsheltered homelessness of 50% or more from 2017 to 2022. And unfortunately, that includes most of the state. People are currently becoming homeless faster than we have been able to rehouse people who are living outside. And then finally, working in tandem with these 2 orders, Executive Order number 2303, which will direct state agencies to prioritize reducing both sheltered and unsheltered homelessness in all areas of the state, not solely those in which a state of emergency has been declared. And those agencies should be using all their existing statutory authorities to do this.
After that, the governor went to a desk to sign each order. She's in the temporary office space inside the state library, and then she took reporter questions. Remember, on Monday, the governor said she wants a $130 million investment to help at least 1,200 people get off the streets within a year. And the first question she faced was about all that money. You'll also hear a follow-up from our Blair Best about the breakdown of those dollars.
We have to bring urgency to this. It's not enough to sign executive orders. So that $130 million investment, I will be encouraging our legislative leaders to work with me to move those resources as soon as possible to prevent more people from becoming unhoused, to help create more transitional shelter, and to provide more services to those folks who are living on the streets. It is an early investment, but is simply not going to be the entirety of the package we need to do, but trying to do that as quickly as possible to get those resources out into the community.
Governor Kotek, just quickly doing the math here, the $130 million in that investment package, it breaks down to about $108,000 per person if you're going to use that money to help 1,200 people. That's quite a lot of money for each homeless person. Is that how it will break down?
Well, we will be able to share more of those details in the coming days, but think about it this way. It's both rent assistance, which looks different than, building a new shelter, plus providing services. So it breaks down in different ways, but we'll try to get you that info as soon as we can.
Excellent, because that is a lot of money per person. So you can bet we'll be keeping an eye out for those numbers. You've been sending us your thoughts as well, including Robbie, who said, Kotek's executive orders are nothing more than lipstick on a pig. The orders are a wish list with no mechanisms or teeth to actually make a difference. And the next question for the governor yesterday was exactly that. Where are the teeth? What actual changes can people in Oregon expect with this new administration and these new actions?
So in the state of emergency as it relates to unsheltered homelessness, I would point out the key issue right at the beginning there, setting up a incident command structure, an emergency management structure, similar to what we do when there's a natural disaster. And this is a man-made disaster. This is a humanitarian crisis. So setting up that framework that local government's very familiar with, bringing an interagency approach and collaboration from the state to work with our local partners. So not only technical assistance and leadership, but also resources. We all have to work together in a new framework if we're going to make progress. As I mentioned in my speech yesterday, there are good things happening on the ground today. And we need more solutions, we need more urgency. And that executive order talks about creating that emergency management structure, which I think is a new tool to the issue right now.
The governor also emphasized that in her proposed budget, she'll be asking for money for behavioral health as well as housing, saying that those two issues have to be worked on together. Of course, it's no secret that you can see the effects of those issues every day on the streets of Portland. And before we get to reaction for these executive orders, we want to show you how the press conference ended yesterday. It was a bit of a tense moment after a reporter asked how Kotek would bring the state together, saying that people in rural Oregon have felt dismissed or forgotten by those in Salem. The governor said she hopes that people continue to believe in the promise of our state, and then went on to say that she wants people from rural Oregon to be at the table when talking about things like housing. And that was supposed to be the last question of the press conference, but the reporter fired back a quick follow-up, and here's how it went.
Given that divide, Governor,
I think we're wrapping up for today.
Sure. One last thing.
Will you include people who are not Democrats on your staff, given this divide we have?
I don't ask that question. I don't ask people what their party affiliation is. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All righty, so there's that. Here's my opinion on all this. I've covered lots of Oregon governors as they've launched their administration over my 32 years. My first was Barbara Roberts. Everyone comes into office with loads of energy and plans to right the ship of state. But the governor can only do so much. It's the legislature that controls the purse strings of the state, and that determines what really happens. We can assume that lawmakers will mostly go along with Governor Kotek since her party controls the House and the Senate, but then again, that's not a guarantee of success. Still, there are hopeful signs for all Oregonians who agree with her progressive leanings. Kotek is a veteran lawmaker who was the House Speaker for nearly a decade and definitely knows how to operate the levers of power. It's unclear whether she will play nice, though, with Republicans or anyone who disagrees with her, although she has promised to embrace all ideas. We shall see. Anyway, these executive orders affect the state, not just us here in Multnomah County. Our Blair Best hit the streets in Portland today, talking with those directly impacted by the homeless crisis. She asked folks here what they hope to see from government in the wake of the governor's new homeless state of emergency.
It's a blue sky day, and our governor prioritized housing and homelessness on her first day. I'm feeling really optimistic.
The state of emergency applies to parts of the state like Portland, where Kaya Sand runs Street Roots, a nonprofit working directly with homeless people.
These are areas across the state that really need this. I would say the part that I think that we all need to stay vigilant on is that housing and homelessness have to be connected.
The emergency order affects areas of Oregon where the homeless population has increased by 50% or more from 2017 to 2022. There are 5 major areas affected, including the Portland Metro and the Willamette Valley. Governor Kotek also set a statewide goal of building 36,000 new housing units per year. Sand believes in order for this to work, the housing needs to be affordable for those who make 30% or below the median income, like Velma Carter, who lives off of about $20 a day.
If she's going to build more housing, how am I going to afford it? I'm tired of being cold.
Carter has been homeless on and off for about 5 years. She currently lives in an RV with her cat.
How is she actually going to get me into affordable housing?
She can't find available shelter and has applied for 43 jobs this month, with no response.
I've been lost in the system.
In an effort to find people like Carter, Governor Kotek announced a third executive order directed at state agencies to prioritize reducing sheltered and unsheltered homelessness across Oregon.
People are currently becoming homeless faster than we have been able to rehouse people who are living outside.
I think that's very, very courageous of her, and I think we need more attention on this issue. Because there's plenty of us out here.
It is extremely reassuring, and I think every Portlander should be grateful that we have a governor that's thinking about Portland and thinking about the
Andrew Hone at Portland's Business Alliance argues the response to homelessness in the Rose City sets an example for the rest of the state.
We are the flagship city. We are the beating heart of its economy. It is absolutely essential that we remedy the situation here because that will translate into obvious systems to be able to fix the issues in other locations.
He's cautiously optimistic for what will come of all this.
And I think all of us are a little bit skeptical about, will this translate into action?
This is nuts.
A skepticism echoed by those living on the streets.
You know, words are empty. It's all about the actions. So we'll see what happens.
Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler's office says the governor's executive orders are promising. The mayor says he now wants to learn more details as to how this state of emergency will affect Portland as they begin to ask for more homeless resources during this legislative session. Blair Best, KGW News.
Let's switch gears for a little bit now to talk about marijuana. On KGW.com, we recently featured a story from our partners over at the Portland Business Journal. They looked at the marijuana sales in each county in Oregon to determine the top pot spot. They looked at the total marijuana sales. Did you see what we did there? They looked at the total marijuana sales in each county and then took that number and divided it by the number of residents within that county. And there's one county that has held the title of top pot spot for 3 years in a row now. I can hear you mumbling at your TV now. It's got to be one of those big metro counties or at the very least somewhere along the coast. Nope. For our answer, we have to head south and east, all the way to Malheur County. That's right, Oregon's second largest county by square miles, behind only Harney County, and with a name that literally means, in the French, misfortune. They sell a lot of pot. We think the county seal could use a little adjustment, so yes, indeed. We think that looks a little better. Marijuana Malheur. We were thinking maybe you want to change your name out there. Stop yelling at your TV. It's just a joke. But how much weed are they selling? Let's take a look at the number put together by the Portland Business Journal's data editor, Brandon Sawyer. Malheur County racked up over $104 million in cannabis sales in 2022. And when you divide that by the county's 32 residents, well, that comes out to more than $3,200 per person. Now, the low population also helps when it comes to figuring out numbers like this. The same amount of sales would be far lower per person in Multnomah County because it has a much larger population. But still, way to go, Malheur. And Malheur isn't just number one by a little bit. By the way, they are far and away the cannabis champs of Oregon. Here's a look at second place Curry County. Again, these are all ranked based on the sales per resident. Curry County's numbers come in at just over $420 per resident, and that's second place. Multiply their sales per resident by 7, and you would still not reach Malheur's amount. So the obvious question is why or how? Well, Malheur County has a not so secret up its sleeve, and it's not a fancy joint or some new strain. It's a state called Idaho. Malheur sits on the border, and Idaho is one of the few states where marijuana is still illegal in America. So dispensaries like those on the border town of Ontario, well, they say hello, people from Boise, as well as their own residents. Downtown Boise to Ontario, Oregon, to drive that's about an hour along I-84 with not very much traffic. So no, every person in Malheur County is not buying $3,200 worth of pot every year, but you can bet those dispensary owners, they're cashing in on all those Idahoans crossing the border. Their wallets and Oregon's tax coffers say, thank you very much. And speaking of taxes, Oregon's substance use disorder industry will be getting less money than initially forecast because marijuana sales across the board in Oregon were down in 2022. Yes, even in Malheur County. You'll remember that your favorite voter-approved Measure 110 uses cannabis taxes to support substance use disorder programs. And pot sales in Oregon were down 16% last year. Statewide sales fell $190 million to just under $1 billion total. Now that is a big number, but it's the first time Oregon has not hit the $1 billion mark in the industry since 2019. Every single county in the state saw a drop, according to the Portland Business Journal. Here in Multnomah County, the pot market shrank by nearly a quarter, down almost 24%. So why were sales down across the board? Well, marijuana industry tracker Headset attributes it to people buying pot less often and spending less when they did venture out to a dispensary. And they didn't have to spend as much because the state has so much supply, literally too much weed, and demand is down. Combine that with all the competition in the industry, and the shops have to keep the prices down to attract customers from other shops across town, so it becomes a price war. While lower prices are great news for consumers who enjoy using Mary Jane, the fact that sales fell so far does not bode well for tax purposes. In the latest forecast by the State Office of Economic Analysis, they're now projecting pot tax revenues in the neighborhood of about $310 million for the years 2021 and 2023. So that's still a lot of money, but it's $30 million less than they originally thought they would have coming in. In that same report, economists say data from the fall harvest show the market could strengthen next year, meaning that higher prices at the dispensaries and more tax revenue may be coming in for the state. And it's not just here in Oregon. Pot sales in Washington state slumped last year for the first time since legalization as well. Retail sales were down 8% in 2022, and the state says that equals around $120 million in unearned revenue. By the way, Washington has the highest tax on retail cannabis sales, 37%, and then they have sales tax on top of that, as well as any local taxes. Here in Oregon, much better. Our cannabis tax is 17%, with no sales tax added on either. Anyway, that industry tracker headset also attributed Washington state's sales decline to people making fewer trips to the dispensary and spending less when they got there. So, what do you think about all this? Are you someone who regularly buys marijuana, and have your spending habits changed? Do things like inflation play a role? Or are you no longer stuck at home like you were during COVID lockdown, so maybe you're just not using it as much now? Let us know what's going on. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail on the phone 503-226-5090.
Still to come on The Story. When we think of foresters, our minds often wander to the wilderness, where there's little influence from society. But what about urban foresters? Seems like a bit of an oxymoron, but there are all kinds of trees and tree-related issues within the city limits, and there's a job for that.
My focus is really on community and resilience and making healthier forests so that we have healthier communities.
We'll introduce you to one such forester, and we'll debrief with environmental reporter Cale Williams on the challenges we face when it comes to trees here in Portland, when The Story returns.
There's a new forester in town, but you won't find her hiking through the woods with a chainsaw and a hard hat. She's the state's newest urban forester. She looks at threats that trees face in cities and suburban areas while also helping us understand the threats that the trees help us avoid. Environmental reporter Cale Williams caught up with her in Northwest Portland.
And then if we were to look up, these wires are communication wires.
Brittany Oxford thinks about trees more than most people.
Eventually.
But not in the same way as you or I probably do.
Our urban environment is filled with trees. They're, kind of in the little spaces that we have for them, but they cover a lot of ground and do a lot for us.
Oxford is the Oregon Department of Forestry's new Urban Community Assistance Forester.
So that's another thing is...
Her job is to help cities across the state, large and small, maintain and grow their urban forests.
It's like if I was to measure this...
And her responsibilities cover the gamut. She might help a city start an inventory of their trees, advise on the best way to prune an urban canopy, or offer suggestions for developing a municipal tree code. She also looks for threats facing urban trees.
I think the biggest threats to our urban forest is going to be things like climate change, increased temperature, extreme weather events.
Oxford previously worked for the City of Portland's urban forestry program.
But I do like the common name because, paper bark.
She explained that roughly 1 in 10 trees in Portland is some kind of maple. Having so many of the same kind of tree, many of them also similar ages and sizes, makes them vulnerable to things like extreme heat, diseases, and pests.
So we have a lack of species diversity, but also a lack of age diversity and probably genetic diversity too.
But for all the threats trees face from climate change, they offer climate solutions too. Shade from trees lowers air temperatures, and the water that evaporates from their foliage provides even more cooling. But the inverse is also true. Neighborhoods with fewer trees, especially in places like East Portland, can suffer from what's known as the urban heat island effect. During the 2021 heat dome, some of those neighborhoods were as much as 30 degrees hotter than their well-shaded counterparts.
So that's, a big social inequality that comes with urban forestry that we want to take into account and help to mitigate and balance.
And balance is key for Oxford in her work. It's not just about how people help trees or how trees can help people, but how we can help each other so that everyone benefits.
My focus is really on community and resilience and making healthier forests so that we have healthier communities, and all of those things touch each other.
Cale joins me now, and I think in Tree City, USA, we all know how important trees are, but it sure is frustrating when a tree goes down in front of your house like it did in front of ours a few years ago, and we said, hey, let's replace that maple with a maple, and the city says, oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Oxford was talking about was that you really want to have the right tree in the right place. If there's overhead wires, you don't want a tree that's too tall. If it's next to a building, you don't want a tree that's brittle and is going to fall over. So you really have to match the tree to its environment. And that's one of the reasons why they have an approved list of trees, which I know can feel restrictive for homeowners like yourself.
It doesn't feel, it is restrictive.
Sure, but it's restrictive for a reason.
Yeah. But let me say this about that. On my street, there are plenty of big, beautiful maple trees that have the kind of the bowl cut out so that it goes through the power lines and all that. And you still get the shade in the summer.
Sure, but it's not great for the tree to have the very middle of its canopy cut out.
It works
for you, but probably not for the tree. So one of the things that Oxford told me, and I asked her about this because I wanted to plant a tree in front of my house in the little parking strip that we have there. I was denied, and I looked down the street and all my neighbors had trees in their parking strip, and I said, so why can't I get one? They said it was too skinny, and so I looked again down the street and saw that all of the sidewalk was buckled from the roots. And so that's why you really want to have the right tree in the right place. I know it's frustrating, Pat.
It is frustrating. And you know what? We've paid to have our sidewalk fixed because, yeah, that is a problem. But it's just something you live with for these big, beautiful trees.
I mean, that might be easy for you. But I mean, tree maintenance and the sidewalk stuff, as you know, is the homeowner's responsibility.
Yeah.
And for somebody who's living on a restricted income, it might not be as easy as just fixing the sidewalk. That might take money away from something else important for them.
Yeah, okie dokie. The city telling us what we can and can't do. I think you said 10% of the city's canopy are maple trees. Is that right?
That's correct.
Should be more. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Moving on, still ahead in an overused cliche, as a new sheriff in town, Multnomah County has its first ever female sheriff, the first in 170 years. We met with Sheriff Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell to talk priorities and what she already is focused on just 11 days into her new job. When the story returns. Multnomah County has a new sheriff, the first woman in, well, forever, actually. Her name is Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell. So tonight we're going to share some of her thoughts as she begins to shape the agency into her liking. First, if you live in the county, seems likely you're going to get to meet her.
I have a lot of goals about ensuring that I am getting out in community more frequently than I was in my previous position. I really like to connect with community members across all corners of our county to really hear and listen and learn from community on what is impacting their community and how can we provide the best public safety services to intervene. I also enjoy really connecting with our staff.
The sheriff said she's also working hard to make sure that she is present for members of her department and gets out to the jails. She also pointed out the sheriff's office is almost fully staffed now, down just 2 deputy spots. That's a real rarity for law enforcement these days. And like many officers and many others, she is concerned about all the shootings.
The violence that we're seeing and the gun violence and people not feeling safe in community is extremely concerning to me. So I'm building those partnerships with our local public safety, with Portland Police Bureau, Gresham Police Department, as well as our state and federal partners, because we have to work together to be able to intervene. We're also working with community groups and community organizations, because we also recognize that we need those types of resources to break down those barriers and really talk with community, heal community, and then help us develop those community-led solutions to reducing gun violence.
The sheriff is also concerned about the number of young people getting involved in the violence. That's part of the reason that deputies are in the Reynolds High School now.
From the sheriff's office perspective, one, it is extremely concerning to me when I'm looking at the age and youth becoming involved in violence. We have recently put 2 deputy sheriffs back in the Reynolds School District at Reynolds High School. So we're working collaboratively with the school district to address any violence issues or really working together to develop solutions. And you have someone on site that if there is a situation that arises, they are immediately there and present. So we're working through that with the school district at Reynolds. And I anticipate that I'll work with Portland Police Bureau and our school district just to talk about how that has gone for us and what strategies that we have employed to reduce violence in our community.
Sheriff Morrissey O'Donnell also revealed that the department now has money for an expert to travel to homeless camps with their outreach team.
That will give us that immediate resource when our HOPE team is out connecting with individuals in the community. They have a resource with them. They are very adept at knowing where the resources and services are around the county, but I think that just adds that extra level of personalized kind of breaking those barriers down and really getting to the underlying causes of why someone is in the situation that they're in.
We'd like to thank the sheriff for her time this morning. And for you, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. I'll see you